Good.
Great.
How do
Hi.
you say Chinese name?
Chen Riyun.
Yun. Okay. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
Riyun. So thank you, Yi, for the opportunity to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. This is the first time I've properly shared this journey of mine, and I'm really nervous, really nervous, and kind of excited to talk to other Chinese or Asian people about what I've learned over the years. And through my time, I've also mentored other young professionals in their workplace. So I'm sure you've seen, if you've seen, I'm Valerie. I'm Chinese-born Malaysian. First language is English, but I can understand a little bit of Mandarin and Malay. I can order food. So,
That's important.
yeah, that's very important. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist since I was 15, but my parents wanted me to be a doctor.
Of course.
So I came to University of Otago 15 years ago for first year health science and ended up doing clinical psychologist. And I have a PhD in neuroscience and psychology.
So you have two PhDs?
No, it's a combined honors. So then the PhD just became combined as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So since an early age, I had quite a lot of different opinions from my family. But there's a part of me that also wanted to be to make them happy. So me coming to New Zealand on my own was a way of experiencing freedom. So I currently work as a psychologist at the hospital and at the university as a lecturer. I'm a justice of the peace. I sit in court. I was at that time the youngest in the country. I'm no longer the youngest in the country. And I'm also currently the vice president of the local council. In terms of leadership roles, on the New Zealand Psychologists Board through the Ministry of Health and Film and Literature Board through the Department of Internal Affairs. So my interest really came from one day I went to a conference and it was an ethnic conference and I met someone called Mei Chen. I don't know if some of you know her. She's this Chinese lawyer and she is such a strong personality. Back then, I didn't really think much about racism or care much about those issues because I felt like, I just keep on doing my thing. I knew this kind of existed, but it wasn't really something that I was focused on. And I remember Mei Chen, and I was still one of those phases where I'm like, I'm just going to work hard and just keep on keeping on. And I remember she came on the stage and she was she was quite assertive. And she said, New Zealand is a racist country. That's all I have to say. And she says, I can say that now. No one can stop me. And she said, I have come so far and through my life, I had to work hard, be really quiet, be really nice to everyone, and be really soft and be gentle and, not kiss ass, but I have to be, make everyone happy. And she said, and now I'm here. She says, I don't have to make anyone happy anymore and I can say whatever I want. And that's when I really experienced, what she was saying, because I had experienced all these things little at a time. And that made me suddenly realize how I wanted to make a difference in the world and how I wanted to move forward. The thing is, a lot of times when we think about racism or equality or equity, people talk about how Asian people need to be helped or saved or rescued or help from their disadvantage. But I guess that's not where my passion lies. My passion lies in, I want real equality. I wanted a seat at the table. I wanted to see young Asian professionals thrive, to be powerful, to be strong, to be seen, to be really part of the leadership. So not just, people needing help to be equal to people, but also true equality means being able to be seen as a leader, to be respected as one, to be given that opportunity or to not be given barriers to becoming part of, that
Not
kind of system.
Giving opportunities to survive, is that what you mean? But also giving opportunities to thrive and achieve more, and not just opportunities to work or given services, but actually be even better than getting a job. And
it's not just about basic needs. It's about really giving us the opportunity to lead people and not just lead other Asian people, lead the country.
That is true equality. You're right.
And that was when I decided, you know what, I don't want to spend all my time shouting from the bottom. I want to work my way so I can whisper from the top. And so that became kind of one of the things that helped me set some of my goals as well.
Yeah, and I just would like everyone to know, Valerie doesn't want you guys to know that she is a really big deal. For us psychologists, okay. I mean, I don't quite understand her other fancy titles. I'm sure they're very fancy, and big deal as well. But I'm not in that kind of world, so I don't quite understand. But in the psychologist world, the psych board actually are the one, we are registered with, they provide us registration. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, that's part of what we do.
Part of it. They regulate us, they provide us registrations. So it's a big deal, the fact, Valerie is one of the board members, because how many board members are there? Not that many, eh?
Nine maximum, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm the first Asian, so that's kind of an interesting experience.
It is, yeah, first Asian, female, and young as well, because most of them are quite experienced, older, senior psychs. So yeah, so it was quite, would it be say, for me, I was quite shocked when I first got to know Valerie. I was like, wow, I was shocked, and then I was like, holy shit, that's really cool. Then I got really excited, because yeah, that was my experience when I found out about you. So well done. So that's all I want to say. Valerie's a big deal.
Oh, thanks for saying that. But trust me, I was quite surprised myself when they let me be part of their team. So yeah.
So anyway, how do you go from that? Keep going.
Okay, so just so you know, I'm really nervous. So I'm just gonna talk slowly. Hopefully that will help me be less nervous.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I think I'm gonna cover kind of the few stages of the way I've come to where I am, and the different skills and strategies that I've learned over the years, beginning pretty much from when I arrived into New Zealand to attend university. What I didn't realize was I started picking up a lot of strategies and skills there in order to build myself. So first of all, I want to also say I was having a hard time trying to find the best way to talk about this, because I don't want to sound like I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I just had a journey of learning different skills. And I'm also really fortunate that I can notice and identify some of the survival strategies I use. So just because this is a workshop, I don't want you to think I got it right and that's something you have to do. But what I hope to do is to bring some unconscious things into our consciousness, so that we are aware of some of the processes that happen, that you're not alone. And also there's no right or wrong way to do something. And you can change your priorities and your strategies anytime. And at some point, find the way home to yourself somewhere.
Yeah.
So my journey actually began a long time ago. When I first came to New Zealand, one of the things I did notice was the important differences in how I thought I wanted to be perceived and how people were responding to me.
How old were you when you first came?
Sorry?
How old were you when you first came?
19.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, still a baby.
Quite young then.
Yeah.
And so because I'm starting there now, depending on what stage you are in your life and career, some of this may seem like things you already know, and that's fine because it's great to share the experience. However, through a lot of my experience mentoring a few young people, sometimes there are some things that may seem obvious to some people that aren't obvious to others. So I'll go through some of these things. So this is kind of what I label as fundamental skills, like kind of setting the scene. When I first came to New Zealand to study, I had to learn some basic cross-cultural communication things to adjust to the New Zealand culture. And this is in university and work. First thing was I wondered why things weren't going so smoothly for me, why some things were harder for me. why what I was doing wasn't getting me anywhere, why some people weren't being very nice to me. And this is quite interesting as well. Like middle-aged admin ladies seem to be a group of people who struggle to get that I struggled with. So I became observant and started to notice what other people are doing and how they are behaving.
When you say struggle with, what was that struggle?
So for example, they would make things in a small way. People who do administrative tasks take hold of a lot of the things that are important, right? Paperwork, documentation, emails, communication. And sometimes when you interact with people, you know when they don't quite want to respond to you, or they're making things a little bit more difficult than you would expect, or they will respond in a dismissive way, or give you information or not give you enough information, or say, this is not possible, we can't do it, when you know that they might do it for someone else. So, you know, these little experiences, it's not one big, huge experience, but you know, you can feel little things like that. So one of the things that I noticed was that the different respect behavior between, well, I'm Chinese, so I'm going to speak for Chinese Malaysian from what I know, how sometimes Chinese people show respect may be seen by Western people as being submissive. And so back in Malaysia, if I were to show respect by being more quiet or more gentle and more timid, I may be treated better because people see, oh, she's such a respectful person. But when I'm in New Zealand and I do it that way, people see me as being submissive, and they sometimes that sometimes means I get treated rudely or taken advantage of, and sometimes people experience work bullying because of that as well. So one of the things I found was I had to invest some time in socializing with people, and socializing in a specific way. So that is, instead of becoming timid, behaving in a little more friendly way, trying small talk. And the small talk has to be a specific type of small talk, you know, talking about the weather, what they did over the weekend, if we have children, what the children did, or the trips that they went to, and to share something minor about yourself too. And another interesting thing is not sharing too much or being too expressive when we share things. I had to, when I shared things, it had to be something quite on the surface, like my dog or a hobby, or I went to a trek and I went for a walk in this new place. And so it's kind of a specific type of small talk that I had to learn to get used to. And once I knew that that was something, I started practicing it a bit more. Sometimes I purposely make conversation to try and practice. And you can tell from the other person's reaction whether what you're doing is working or not. So that's kind of the way I was trying to go about it. And English is my first language, so it's not that I can't speak. It's just that I wasn't saying the right things or acting in the specifically the right way, and that was sending them signals that made them misunderstand where I was coming from.
I do see a lot of people comment on social media that Asians, Chinese people, I don't know about other kind of Asians, but Chinese people always complain about they really struggle with the small talk, the chat after weekend or the lunchroom chats. So it's interesting to hear how you practiced it. And so how long was the process when you realized you need to start to do that? And then how long did you really practice to a point it become your second nature?
It's still not my second nature, I have to say, but it's easier to do now because I know what is required of me. This is not something that I enjoy doing. I don't like small talk. When I talk with people, it starts becoming a story, and you know, we talk about serious things sometimes, or meaningful things. But sometimes in different cultures that might be seen as oversharing. I know me and my friends, we like complaining a lot, but complaining is a way of bonding or being Yeah, and it's not like a negative complaining. It's just the way that I interact and my family interacts and my friends interact. But there is a specific way that my experience with New Zealand, European white people is that too much negativity or complaining is also seen as something that they kind of don't really like. So I had to learn to as well be a little bit more positive. And the other thing I also learned, because these were generally middle-aged women and I'm a young woman, is because sometimes we can appear threatening as young women, to appear that sometimes there's a belief that we think we know everything. So I also learned to look interested and ask for some learnings, like, can you teach me this? Or can you show me that? And then I express a lot of gratitude just to say, hey, I want to learn from you. Because when someone feels like they're your mentor or feels like they're teaching you something and they're your teacher, they tend to become more on your side because they want to help you. And so that was another way that I kind of try and make things more manageable for myself. Yeah, so that was one, learning the different in respect behavior. Another one, which I found among a lot of my friends as well, is the differences in work culture. So back in Malaysia, and my friends were still like this, it was always about working as hard as you can, as fast as you can, and as hard as you can, and as long as you can. And the more time you spend working, the faster you work, the better you are. However, my experience here at the beginning, and that's made me stop quite quickly, is the harder you work, the more you work, or the faster you work compared to other people. Not only do you get given more work by management or staff, your colleagues may get unhappy that you are making them look bad sometimes. And in the end, I know it's noticing that working hard doesn't change how much money I made, but it brings me less benefit because of the different work culture from what I was used to.
Yeah, you get more isolated in the office, right? That's what
Yeah, you get more isolated and you get given more work.
Yeah.
So I was like, why am I doing this? So in that way, I learned to relax a little bit around work. So modifying my work culture to fit the work culture that I've noticed around me. Having boundaries about how much I work compared to other people.
Yeah.
And another important thing I learned in work is that people do like socializing. And again, it's back to that small talk, because I looked around me and I said, who are my colleagues that were getting more friends, or people like them more, or having things, or were experiencing things easier for them? And these were people that often spend more time socializing and talking to others. So I learned that even when I didn't think it was important, or didn't think that it was easy, to adapt to the environment and to spend some time socializing there. I do the same now as well. So that's one. And another thing I guess I learned at the beginning with all these differences in communication and culture is that I learned to accept that sometimes I will be alone and I will feel isolated. I learned not to force conversations or try too hard to fit in, because another cultural thing that I've noticed in New Zealand is that it makes people more difficult to accept people who appear that they're trying too hard, or they don't seem cool or chill if you're trying too hard or seem too eager. That is also something that doesn't get responded well to. So I learned in some situations that my time is better spent on things that have outcomes. So I learned sometimes to just accept that people won't interact kindly, and I just focus on doing my own thing.
Basically, you're saying try, but don't try too hard.
Yeah, be okay with it. Do what you can, but you can't control how other people treat you. And
you can't force the other party to accept you, right? You can try. Notice the difference in culture, how people behave in terms of, behavior or work culture, but don't try too hard.
No.
You feel like you're really confident, a lot of time it's not your fault.
Yep.
Yeah, and relationships always 50-50, right?
That's right. And you know what the interesting thing is that if you do all the right things, the small talk or the this and the that, and then you go, all right, that's clearly not something you want at the moment, and you just go and do your thing. What you do find then is them go, oh, okay, and then people may make more effort to approach you as well. So it's a very interesting dynamic here, the pull and the push that comes with it.
Yeah, I personally experienced that as well. Yeah, it's very interesting.
It is, isn't it?
It's unfortunate, but you have to go through that. But
go with the flow.
Yeah, you only can try so hard. Like, when you first get to a workplace, people start isolate you, they assume you are whatever. And then you try, but you don't try too hard, and you give up trying, just be yourself, and and then eventually people see you are capable, you are actually okay, and they slowly like approach you and accept you. And maybe a 3-year process, maybe a 5-year process, but it is what it is.
And even when they approach you, to still have to, for me, still having to play by the rules of small talk and the work culture stuff, and it's very interesting. Another thing that I had to do was to find other ways and places to be connected with others and to feel accepted. So I came to New Zealand alone, and I studied here by myself, and my family was back in Malaysia. And one of the things I've always found enjoyment in is volunteering. Because when you're volunteering and giving your time to people for free, of course they'll welcome you, of course they'll accept you, of course they'll be really nice to you and show a lot of appreciation for you. So it was a place for myself to get a lot of positive social connections and some of that acceptance, and to learn to connect with the local culture, but in a more safe environment. And I found that was really helpful for mental health. And what I also found later was a benefit was that it was really good for my CV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because I chose to volunteer in services that were related to what I wanted to be. So I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. So instead of randomly volunteering and like gardening or cooking, I'd volunteer in a rest home dementia unit, the brain injury center. So also, even when I was volunteering, focusing in the general direction of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. Yeah.
Even with volunteering work, you've done it with a purpose, right?
Yeah, even with that.
Yeah. Well done.
So after some of learning what the differences are and adapting to that, I reached this thing that I now see as stage 2. How do I fit in? Because it's all very well and good to kind of survive and not be a target. But the other thing is, how do I belong or feel like I belong or look like I belong? One of the things I noticed when I was doing my PhD. So when I did my PhD, it was very interesting. It was a bit, and some people experience this as well. I noticed with other Asian, not just Chinese, but Asian PhD students, is a bit of that kind of experience, right? We start off doing really well and working really hard, and then somewhere along the back of the line is like, why am I not meeting standards? And what it is, sometimes it's because when you start the PhD, the supervisors are giving a lot more instruction and a lot more direction and communicating in a more directive way. As they give us more independence, as we go through our PhDs, what I find is they start becoming more collaborative and using more a different kind of language. So I know this as, if the terms are there, didactic teaching and Socratic teaching. So didactic teaching is someone telling you what to do, where to find it, and here are the instructions. Socratic teaching is kind of asking you lots of questions and hope you figure out what the answer is or what they want you to do. And so it can make it so difficult to understand what has been asked from you. And sometimes you don't realize you're missing the mark until someone gets mad at you. So one of the things I learned was how to find the point, to not take words literally, because usually when people speak, it's filled with words that don't really mean very much, but there is a point in there, but a lot of the words around it don't actually mean much. So for example, my PhD supervisor would say, have you thought about discussing this with Jane? And I'll say, no, not really. And then he'll say, I wonder if that is something you may find helpful. And so I was like, well, I suppose it could be helpful. I thought he was just asking me these questions. when actually what he's saying is you need to discuss this with Jane because it will be helpful.
Basically,
But
go
he's,
back
yeah,
again.
but I'm just answering his questions, and I notice this a lot. So this is quite obvious because now I'm talking about it. But what I notice is a lot of these times not knowing whether people are asking something out of me. Another thing, like for example, are you planning on updating me on this project? And you're like, I guess so.
Please update me on this project, right?
Yeah, right. And you were saying how you call it like all the bluffy words.
Yeah.
And it was like it's like a box with it's like a package with a small item in it, but lots of packaging and newspaper
around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes if it looks like the newspaper and cardboard is what is the content of the box, but actually what you do is you need to get it out of the way and find the little lipstick that's
Get lost. You do get lost what they're actually asking. Even now, my supervisor still does that. Just, a month ago, I sent her a report, and then she knew exactly what I want her to pick, to comment on. And then her email only was 3 sentences, but I read it like, I swear, 5 times. I didn't get it. It was only 3 sentences. And I was like, is it my English issue? And surely not, because there's only 3 sentences. So yeah, so I emailed back, be like, is that what you mean? And it came back 2 sentences. And then I was like, okay, I think, yeah. So I'm still doing that now. So
Yes. And sometimes I try and clarify, right? I would say, oh, are you asking me to, I would say, should I have a discussion with Jane? And they say, well, only if you think it's appropriate. When actually that's what they really want. And so what I learned to do is to listen out for these keywords, to read between the lines, to not just take things literally and to think what other potentials there are. And sometimes I ask for clarification. Like now I would say things, this sounds like you are suggesting this. Is this what you're saying? Just to get myself some clarity. And sometimes you still don't get the answer, but it's better than not knowing.
yeah, it's better checking, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, so, oh gosh.
The other thing, and so now I reached a point where I was beginning to apply to get into the clinical psychology program in Otago. And I thought about working smarter, not harder, because I did work pretty hard.
Do I let everyone know how hard it is to get into a clinical program? Because I know you don't want to tell people you're a big deal.
Not a big deal.
I would tell people how hard it is to get into clinical. That is why I didn't even bother try. Because how many universities offer clinical program? Not that many, eh?
I used to think it's 8, but I think it's less than that now. I'm not sure.
7 or something, yeah, because I know AUT doesn't provide clinical programs, so it's probably 7 or 6. I don't think Lincoln University offers programs, so it's probably 6. So we only have roughly about 6 universities offer clinical psychology program, okay? And each year they take 10. They would interview, look at your marks, look at your volunteer work, look at your CV, everything, and then there are 2 rounds, right? And then interview you in person. So each year they take 10, and unofficially, every year, like my friend said that to me. My friend got into a clinical program. Every year, there's 1 Asian person got accepted.
Yeah, only 1. And if you meet, yeah,
that's among all universities who's got clinical programs. So it's like an unspoken rule. Okay, it's never written anywhere, but roughly every year you get 1 Asian person, and usually that Asian person born in New Zealand, right? That's how we use it.
Yeah.
So I just leave it out there. That's how hard it is.
And so rightly so, leading me into what I'm going to say, which is I got rejected 3 times getting into the program, and I got past the first round every single time, but I always got rejected after the interview. So it wasn't my results, it wasn't my results, it wasn't my stuff on paper, it was after the interview. And that was 3 times, which means 3 years I had to apply. So the first time I felt, it was just really bad luck. not everyone can get in. Like you said, it's a really difficult protocol to get in. I'll try again next year. Next year, I got put on the waiting list. And I remember as I was leaving, I was in an office and someone told me about Otago's criteria. They said, Otago, because we are in the South, is known for, again, that unspoken rule of picking people who behave a certain way or seem a certain way that aren't challenging and are of a certain kind of upper middle class and tend to be more Eurocentric. And they also told me about the one Asian quota. So I then realized, okay, so like I said here, find out what people are really looking for. And sometimes it's not just the criteria on the paper. So the last year, after I finished my PhD, I did change a little bit. I changed strategies by changing how I spoke. So again, I became a little bit more outspoken, and I added a little bit more extra. I do the small talk when I come in. How's everyone? What a cold day that's outside, showing that I can communicate, because I guess showing that you can interact a certain way is also part of the process. I changed the way I dressed. And to be fair, I did become more white. I spoke more white. I acted more white. And I showed people that I would fit in.
How did you change? How did you dress before and after? What do you mean by the way you dress?
Well, to be fair, I used to work, my PhD, I worked in the lab, right? So I wore track pants. I wore a puffer jacket.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Regular attire. And I then looked around me to see how other people were dressing. And if you notice, or I noticed, regular non-Asian people who were born here dress quite differently as well. In my experience, I was quite casual.
Like smart casual rather than casual, is that what you mean?
Yeah, in a way, the puffer jackets were a different kind of puffer jacket. Like it's the shoes were different. They would wear jeans and a different kind of jeans. I know that I see all my Asian Malaysian friends, we wear a lot of loose clothing.
Yeah.
That's quite that looks really casual. But the way that the outfits they wear are like things you see in Glassons or
I remember now. Yeah, when I was at uni, my Malaysian friends do wear a lot of Glassons. Now, yeah, you're right. Yeah. It is because for Chinese, for us, I think some of us do tend to also wear a little bit too brandy, too very common. Yeah, and then we tend to wear a little bit too brandy, too new, too good, too fancy.
Yeah.
So here, a lot of us learn to kind of tone it down a little bit. Yeah, so that's interesting. There's a question came in, and I think it's a really good question. So, Valerie, do you feel happy being or act more white, I guess, at that time?
Can you ask that again?
Do you feel happy? I think at that time, because you said you realize in order to get into the program, you need to become or act a bit more white. At that time, did you feel happy about it? You just like to survive and get in.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's a really interesting question because I would actually get to that later, where I did later on, after having to pretend for a very long time, I was unsatisfied later on about the system as a whole and how I struggled to be accepted as who I am. But at that time, I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I had a goal. And my goal was to be a clinical psychologist. And that for me is really important. I know that once I get in, I'm in. Once I pass, then I'm pass, then I get to be whatever. But I just like, for me feels like part of studying. I don't want to study. I don't want to stay up late and take exams. And I do it because I have this thing that I want to achieve. And so for me, that was something that I felt was more important. And so I wasn't unhappy doing it. In fact, I felt pretty pleased that it worked. Because there are things I cannot control, and changing my behavior was something I could control. So personally, when I could control something about myself to change my outcomes, it made me feel like quite positive about it. It's not something that I feel in the long term it wasn't helpful, and I will talk about that later. But in the short term, that was something that helped me move towards something I wanted, and so I felt okay about it.
That was a necessary. Yeah.
Sorry?
That was a necessary move. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Happy is an exaggeration. Happy wouldn't be what I would, I wasn't joyful, but I definitely did feel like it was necessary, and I felt positive about doing it.
The result, I think. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I get what you mean.
And then yeah, I got it. And that's when I experienced a lot of racism in the program.
You thought you finally got it after 3 years.
Yeah, but of course I had to expect that, right? Because in order to get in, I had to behave a certain way, which tells me that they're looking for a certain type of person. So it wouldn't be any different in the program, would it?
No. How many years is it? 4, 5? How many years is it?
One year of fourth year papers, then 1 year trainee year, and then 1 year internship year. So about 3
years. Okay. And you were already halfway through your PhD, right?
I finished my PhD by then.
You already finished your neuropsych PhD at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, crazy. Okay.
So now I looked around again to see how other people are behaving, dressing, how my classmates and my staff are doing or saying. And again, I decided to modify how I was, and I created a bit of a clinical psychology persona for myself. So it's not all about fitting in, right? Because part of growing up is about changing and modifying our behaviors too. So, I know that parts of it seem like, oh, all I want to do is fit in, true. And at the same time, part of growing up from becoming a teenager or a young person into an adult is modifying our behavior to get the best outcome. So it's a bit of a blending of both, and sometimes you don't know which is which. So one of the things I did, for example, was being more intentional again about what I wear. I noticed what I wear was quite important in blending in. I noticed that clinical psychologists wear quite flowy clothes, flowy pants and clothes that are a little bit casual, formal, but quite flowy, not threatening, not too businesslike, not too formal.
You know why? I figured out why. Because after you feel bloated.
True.
Yeah, and you have to sit there. That is why you need it to be flowy. You can't wear it well fitted. Otherwise, after lunch, you sit there. It's super uncomfortable.
It's true. I noticed that. That's why I have coats now and cardies. I spoke more softly and more slowly because one of the things me and my friends, when we get excited, I speak like this. I get really fast. I get really excited, and I use a lot of words. And sometimes it can be a bit much again because so yeah, anyway, I spoke more slowly, more softly. I reduced some of my expressiveness and some of my strong emotions, being bright but not too enthusiastic. The thing we talked about just now, be positive. I didn't offer too much strong opinions, and unfortunately, there has been, experiences where strong opinions are seen as being too sensitive. And they may get treated differently again. And sometimes not being too negative or critical or complaining, which is something I say a lot because I do enjoy doing that. Sometimes it's my way of interacting with my friends. And to not challenge or be seen as challenging and not appearing overly. So it wasn't a safe environment, to be fair. And so I had to respond in a manner that helped me survive as well.
I get it. So that's why I want to say, I just want to remind our audience at that time, it's not Valerie now. At that time, it wasn't a safe environment, and Valerie need to go through her course, needs to get qualified. So that was a temporary, almost like a surviving skill, isn't it, for you?
Yeah, it's a survival mechanism for sure. Like, I remember in my internship year, right, I wrote a report, and this is the first report. This is my first report, a first proper mental health report for a community mental health team I had ever written. I had never written one before. This is my first one ever.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it wasn't going to be good. No one's as good the first time they ever write a report.
Okay.
And unfortunately, so my supervisor comes back to me saying there are a lot of corrections. And she was trying to be nice. So she said, I understand that maybe it has been really difficult to write this report because especially when English isn't your first language. And I know, right? At this point, I didn't realize that these things existed. I thought once I got in the course, I'll be fine, but I wasn't fine. And so I accidentally reacted in my face, like my face reacted really strongly. And she saw me and she go, oh, did I say something wrong? And I said, no, that's fine. I was just a bit surprised. And then the next day she came into my room. I remember feeling inside, feeling really strong about it. You know, I felt it's not fair because English is literally my first language.
Yeah.
I can't speak any other language.
And that really hurt. That really hurt.
Yeah, because I have no other language. And don't forget, at this point, I'd finished writing an entire PhD thesis.
Yeah, exactly. You were already a doctor. Oh gosh.
Yeah. So the next day she came back to me and she says, Valerie, I noticed that you reacted really strongly when I said this about your report. You know, I just wanted to know why you reacted that way. And I thought, oh, this is not someone who really, really wants to know.
No.
So I had to hold it in and I had to say, I was just a bit stressed out that I had so many mistakes on my report that it looked like English wasn't my first language. So I thought if that were the case, I must have done really badly in the report. So I was just a little bit stressed out about that.
Good save, Valerie.
Woo! Yeah. So that was one of the things I learned. Just let it, let it hold sometimes, because nothing I would have done would have made things better for me. In fact,
it would have only made your life more miserable if you actually gave her the answer. If you didn't, yeah.
And so that was my next stage, which was fitting in when I was still in the program. So then, even though I was studying, what I was also thinking of is, hey, I want to do the next thing, which is leadership, right? So I've always been someone who plans really early. And I
started planning at 15.
Yeah. So I'll tell you about this planning early thing. A lot of times I notice what people do is they, and you've mentioned it as well, that people live life in stages. After they say, I want to apply for clinical psychology in my 3rd year. So in my 3rd year, I'll apply. What actually happened is, even though I could only apply at the end of my 3rd year of university, I started aiming for volunteer jobs related to mental health in my 1st year of university. And then what happened was, when university summer holidays came, I applied for a summer research scholarship. Wow. And then I Googled all the different lecturers to see who was also a clinical psychologist and a lecturer. And then I chose to work with them. Wow. Because I know during the year, a lot of students will want to work with these particular lecturers because they're also clinical psychologists. So there's a lot of competition. So before the year started, in the summer, I offered to do research for them. So then in the so no one's around, they're on holiday, and then I worked really hard, and they liked me. So then when uni started the next year, I said, oh, could I just continue working with you? And they of course said yes. So I never had to compete. And so then part of my application also said that I worked with these researchers or lecturers who are also clinical psychologists. So even though I could only apply my 3rd year, I was prepping for it for my 1st year. So talking about that, start planning early for advantages. Blending your stages together. Just because something starts or ends in a certain date doesn't mean you have to start or end in a certain date. You can start accumulating advantages a bit earlier on.
And I think that's the hardest thing about studying or to become a registered psychologist. It's not necessarily about the coursework, isn't it? It's about you have to blend everything in. It's about you have to do your academic work, you have to do your like internship or volunteer work, you have to do this and that. It's about blending things in order to get qualified at the end. So I don't think a lot of people realize that is the hard part about blending everything rather than just coursework on its own.
Yeah. Rather than focusing on one thing, it's having to learn how to do a lot of different things at the same time.
Yeah.
So while I was in the clinical psychology program, that's when I started thinking about leadership. I was looking for opportunities to advance myself and explore leadership. And remember, I knew, and remember, I have not qualified at anything yet. I'm still a university student at this point. And I knew that I couldn't get leadership experience without being given leadership opportunities, right? You need experience to get positions, you need positions to get experience. So I was like, how do I improve my leadership CV? I wasn't qualified yet, and I was finding my young age and my ethnicity quite a barrier for any position I was trying to apply for. Do you know, I applied for 80 jobs and I couldn't get a single one. A specific time, and much less leadership role. So again, remember, this is quite a few years ago. Maybe things are different now, but that was my life learning experience. So what I decided to do was, like I thought, okay, so I'm really young and I'm Asian, and it's so difficult, and people are less comfortable welcoming me in leadership positions there. So how about I try and build my experience through committees or boards that were ethnically based, because they don't mind that I'm Asian. So I thought that would be my So I thought, you know what? It will almost be impossible at my young age, with my no experience, being a young Asian person, to compete in the general race with other Western people in a Western society. I thought, why don't I just swim in another pool for now, the easier pool for now? And that's when I joined the Dunedin Multi-Ethnic Council, the committee here, and the Shakti Community Council, which is that women's refuge for women of diverse and ethnic backgrounds. And I did this.
Sorry, just to clarify, at that time you were in the clinical program, right?
Yeah, I'm in the program. And even just being in the clinical program for ethnic or colored people, for other Asian people, that already seems quite good. Just even being in the program. So they welcomed me. And so I thought, okay, why not? Even though, like you said, a lot of the content of some of these things wasn't my life dream, but it was a way that I thought I could build my experience up. And then I later used the points and advantage I collected in these little places to help me swim in the regular pool. So then the other thing that I did learn, and this is the question.
I just want to clarify to our audience. I don't think people know how intense the clinical psychology program is. It's intense. Intense is not even the right word for it. It's intense. Okay.
It's really intense.
Yeah. So for Valerie to get another committee job, unpaid, it's crazy, honestly, crazy. That's all I can say.
I was trying to make money too, so I did have a part-time job on top of it. But do remember, I finished my PhD already, so I guess that maybe gave me an extra time one day of my life. But thanks, V, for clarifying. So the next thing I learned, and that was a bit of the question around being happy, is this is personal, okay? So just because I'm saying this doesn't mean it has to apply for everyone. But for me, I learned that not everything has to feel right, it has to be right now. Because for me, what was more important is what I wanted in the long term. And part of my upbringing, again, it's a personal thing, is something that I still hold as part of my background, which is I am okay to sacrifice time and energy if I know there's something long-term I want out of it, even if it's not something I feel is what I want at the moment. Because I notice a lot of people sometimes, or my friends, or the temptation is that there is a Western message of being true to yourself. You must always be true to yourself. That's
for privileged.
Yeah.
Majorities, not for minorities who's trying to survive in a Western country.
Yeah, nothing is more important than what feels right to you, to be true for you, which in itself can sometimes trap us in the mindset that everything we do needs to feel right. Otherwise, you're sacrificing. So even little things like stand up for yourself, be brave, speak up. These are, for me, was a lot of Western messages that sounded like attractive, right? Of course, I wanted to be happy. Of course, I wanted to be true to myself. Of course, I wanted to feel right. Of course, I wanted to be brave and be able to speak up, but that's not who I really was at the time. And that was not appropriate for me at that stage, at that time.
Consequence as well, right?
Yeah. And that's not to say I'm doing it right, but I was being true to myself, because the true person that I am is the kind of person that sacrifices a little bit of my identity, a little bit of my joy, a little bit of my opinions, a little bit of my time, because I know why I'm doing it. And I know at the end, I wanted to whisper from the top and not shout from the bottom. And that was my way of getting there. And yeah. You know, for example, nobody likes taking exams. Nobody likes studying. That's not enjoyable. Nobody feels motivated to go to the gym, but we do it because we want something out of it. And so this for me was my way of doing it.
I think what you're trying to say is you do make sacrifices, but it's focused, goal-oriented, and also limited, right? You sacrifice things to a degree, not 100%, or basically break yourself apart kind of sacrifice. So it's goal-oriented, limited sacrifice, so you know where you're going. I like that.
Yeah. That's a good one to point out. Thank you, Yi. So yeah, I wasn't sacrificing for nothing. I wasn't trying to fit in for nothing. If I didn't have the program to go through, if I didn't have a goal, if there wasn't something I could see that I wanted, then sacrifice means nothing. I'm just throwing things away. But it wasn't that. I was aiming to get somewhere. And to be really, really fair, if I tried something, if I tried a new strategy, if I tried changing the way I dress or the way I behave, and it wasn't working, I'd stop. I'd go, all right, I'll try something else. I didn't keep doing the same thing as well. So you're right about that having to be limited as well. It's only going to keep, like, why would I keep going to the gym if it doesn't work? I'd stop, or I'd try another program.
Efficient, isn't it? It's limited and efficient sacrifice, isn't it? Like, always efficient and limited and well planned. That's
targeted.
So yeah, I think that's important to point out, because I think we Asians, we really like to say we sacrifice for something. We like to sacrifice. I think we like to work hard, but just to remind everyone, yes, you work hard, but with goal-oriented, limited, efficient, and well reflected as well, right? Like you would change.
And always be willing to be flexible to change. If something doesn't work, change. If something doesn't work, change. Know how long to stick it out for, and when it's time to finish. But don't change too quickly, because that's what a lot of younger people do. I noticed with my peers as well, before testing something out.
For it and then see how it plans out.
So after I joined, so the next thing is I learned, this is a really interesting one, reframing my weakness into a strength, right? So after I joined,
I have to say, I love that one. Keep going.
When I thought of it, when I first thought of it too, I was like, I can't believe this came out of my brain. So, so after I joined these two committees, suddenly I could say in my CV that I had governance and leadership experience and community service. Using this, I then applied to become a justice of the peace. So initially, when I first rang them up and said, I'm interested, they said, we don't need any more justice of the peaces. We have enough JPs in the area. We don't need any more. Then suddenly, he asked me what committee boards I was on. And I told him Dunedin Multi-Ethnic Council and Shark. He said, wait. Do you speak a second language? I said, well, not fully. I can say a little bit of words. But then I realized he was looking for diversity. Yeah, and that's when I learned that actually the things that I was trying to hide could now be brought out and reframed into a strength. How do I do this? So another example was when I was applying for higher end board roles. Think about it. Remember, I'm just graduated at this point, and now I'm applying for more high end boards. And these boards, you have to know, they're filled with really inexperienced people who are much older, who are bosses of companies, who are leaders in like so many fancy things and hospitals. And then there's me, this chick who just graduated 2 years ago, 2 years ago, Asian and super young. So then I decided I don't want to compete at that. I will never be as experienced, never be as white, never be as old, never be as any of that. But what I can do is I can repackage what I offer to say, I can't be better than you, but I'm different from you, and you might need that. So now I couch my Asianness, instead of being as white as possible, I say, actually, I have a lot of experience and knowledge in culture and diversity. Then as a young, inexperienced person, I say, I also have the perspective of an early career professional. And then I also say that because of my age, I have the knowledge of younger people, a younger kind of cohort, and I can provide a variety in decision makings, and I can provide variety in points of view. So now the board, sorry.
Rather attractive. Suddenly, yeah, that's a good sell. It does make you rather attractive.
Right? It sounds so much better than saying I'm just really young Asian girl with no experience. I just graduated. So suddenly the boards realize I have something they didn't have. Prior to this, they were looking for something they already had, which was more of something they already had. So what I ended up realizing I could do was create positions for myself that aren't competing with people who are already better in a specific way. So now I'm not seen as worse or better, but just different and useful. Yeah. So in terms of that number 4 there, reframing my weakness into a strength. If you can't be better, I guess be different.
How did that come out of your brain? That's amazing. I love that.
It's weird, but it's also true. None of that is a lie. I'm not exaggerating.
That's
you know? Yeah. I don't even have to pretend to know a lot. I am literally telling them this is who I am, but reframing it. So again, reframing what you think might be a weakness into a strength.
That's amazing. Keep going. I love that.
So stage 4, being confident, because we're all about survival here, right? So what I will notice or point out till now, at first I say I'm more quiet, I'm more gentle, I'm more soft, and I try not to stand out, I try and fit in. But the thing is, my positions was changing, my environment was changing, and I had to change with it if I wanted to grow. So my next stage, now that I've become in positions where I had to take a bit more lead, I had to learn how to act brave and confident. And I struggled with that. I know it sounds confident now, but it's because I had one drink and a lot of support from me. But really, I'm sweating in my pits under this jacket. I'm super nervous when I go public speaking, and I don't at all feel as confident as I look. So again, I did the thing that I tended to do was I look around and see who is reflecting something that I would like to learn from and adopt. And in this case, at some workplaces and some events and some leadership events, I see very loud, overconfident men that acted like they know everything. These were the men that used to intimidate me or make me feel like I wasn't good enough. But now I'm like, why is everyone listening to them? Because I started noticing who are people listening to. And I learned a lot of times these people didn't know what they were talking about or didn't have as much information as they were confident, even though they thought they did. But they would get listened to. And I started thinking maybe sometimes it wasn't about who knew more. Sometimes it was about who appeared most confident.
Yeah, not
But
sometimes. I think you're being very kind here.
yeah.
Not at the time.
And I don't like it, but I've seen it in some workplaces on LinkedIn where there was a post. They said it's not about how much someone knows, it's about how loud they are that they get listened to. So it's kind of not really great. But again, I was in a different space now and I had to learn. So I observed how they behave. And I would notice that even though they didn't have much knowledge to back up their confidence, sometimes they use a little words here and there and they kind of sound smart. And so here I was feeling worthless. Remember, I did feel worthless. I was afraid to say things that I knew for sure or that I believed in. And even when I did speak up, I felt like shit. I felt like, oh, everyone's going to know I'm an idiot. I said something wrong. I don't know anything. Like when I'm speaking right now. And then if I say something wrong, I feel really bad about myself for a few days after trying to say something.
Oh.
So I thought, I'm now in these positions. I need to actually begin acting like one, you know? I need to somehow try. So how I did it to get over the first hump of it was I knew of this man. He was super confident. He was from my workplace, my last few workplaces. He was really confident, but super useless. And everyone knew how useless he was, but nobody would, there were no consequence to his uselessness. He was just really confident and he was really loud and he acted like he knew everything. And everyone would think that he knew everything, but also knew he was useless. They would talk about him behind his back, but there were no consequences and no one ever really approached him.
How crazy you can play with it by just acting confident.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people can think of people that they know are like this. And so I started thinking maybe sometimes people weren't chosen for their abilities and skills. Maybe it's not about my abilities and skill at the moment, even though I did enjoy building them and I did always have that at the back of my head. I thought maybe one of the most important things to build now is my confidence, because my abilities and skills weren't the things holding me back anymore. It's my ability to present myself and to behave in a way that was confident and appeared like I knew what I was talking about and strong. So every time, so this guy, he's not his real name, let's call him Jake. Every time I was in a situation where I got scared or doubted myself, I didn't want to speak up or regretted something, I would say to myself, what would Jake do in this situation?
Oh, what would Jesus do? What would Jake do?
What would Jake do? Yeah, because he just does it. And even if things go wrong, no consequence. So I was like, well, I know I have the skills and abilities, so I'm not going to be worse than that. But if he can do that with nothing, I can do that with a little bit more. So I thought, what would Jake do? And I just practiced that again and again and again. I started being more firm, more calm. I lowered my voice. I used a deeper voice. I used fewer words, but I used bigger words. And so that again changed the way I appeared to people. Yeah. The next thing I learned about being confident is to try, right? It's worth a try. Nothing can go wrong. All people can do is say no. When I applied for all of these roles and positions, I wasn't actually confident in applying for any of these. I never walk in going, I think I'm going to get it. I'm worthy. Remember that at this point, I'm about 10, 12 years since my fundamental skill stage where I was felt like I didn't belong. I wasn't acceptable, that I was bullied at work, that I wasn't dressed right, and I experienced a lot of racism. So I've spent years and years believing that all these things I want for myself were impossible. I'm too young. I'm too inexperienced. I've spent a lot of my years being seen as small, tiny, insignificant, not very important. If I didn't believe that, why do you think I worked so hard to fit in, right? Yeah. And if I didn't believe that, why do you think I started on the easy things instead? But the thing is, what got me through is even though my beliefs, my feelings, my thoughts, and a lot of times reality and other people told me that there was a very small or no chance for me to do great things, I still tried. I didn't let my feelings stop my actions or behaviors or plans. It didn't mean my feelings were true or not true. I didn't bother trying to fix that. I just thought I'd just do it. I've seen unqualified, confident people do it. So I can try.
So
And
your determination comes from almost your motivation, determination comes from unqualified people.
yes. I remember telling someone my worthlessness feels like my worth, because I was like, oh well, I can't lose. And what I realized when I started getting these opportunities is I was like, imagine if I had let my thoughts and beliefs stop me. Because sometimes what I do notice, and this I've noticed with my peers as well, that when we live in a cage for a long time, sometimes we don't realize when the door has opened, and we get trapped by the cage inside our minds, right? And so the one thing that I always held true is that it is valid. Yes, it's not fair that I had to behave a certain way. Yes, it's not fair that things are the way they are. And yes, I can still try. And so, yeah, even if you don't believe in yourself, behave like you do.
Amazing. Literally fake it until you make it.
Literally fake it. And even if you make it, you make it. If you don't, oh well.
Amazing.
And that's where I then learned the thing that about myself that was helpful for me too is investing in the process, not the outcome. When I do these things, I may have a goal, but I don't expect to succeed. I don't even think about whether I will succeed, because success is not something I can control. I can control what I do. So I focus my energy on the things I can control, which is what I can do about myself, what I can do to increase my chances, how I develop myself better, how do I become the person I want to be, what is important to me. So I put in my effort because I cannot do better than my best. So I don't waste my time trying to be the best, because my best is only my best. That's all I can do.
I love that.
That's my truth.
You're so invested in the process,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, outcome is important to everyone, right? Everyone would like a positive outcome, but I love how you value the process. You're so focused on the process. You're so invested in reflecting, refine the process that actually lead you to success. So I love that.
It's weird. Yeah. If you're chasing success, sometimes it doesn't lead you to reflect, right? Because you're aiming and you're looking at this one thing. But the thing with success is you cannot control it. You cannot control what is or isn't in the end yours to have, but you can control how much you put into it and what you do to get there. And so one thing I learned is this, to develop myself despite all other factors. I improve myself, I develop myself, I reflect myself, despite the factors as well. So yeah, that was the stage 4 of being confident.
I suddenly have a really random question. I'm not sure you can answer it or not, but I'm just going to put it out there. You don't have to have an answer for it. What if you didn't succeed after all this? What would you be doing right now? How would you be feeling?
Well, I did. The thing is, I did not succeed, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
I'm here because you see 1 out of 100 tries.
Yeah.
You see the one thing I got after the 20 or 30 things I didn't get.
True.
So it may actually not be a matter of whether you do or you don't, but when and what. Because when I started thinking about leadership, I didn't think about, I want to be on the Psychologist Board. I say, what leadership opportunities I can develop myself into. Yeah. So I guess for me, I would never not see myself as not successful, because my process and my development of myself and where I am is where I feel all right, if you know what I mean.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't have that. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm not going to go, that's the next thing I want to do. I just think, okay, after this after my 3-year appointment, I'll reapply. I'll get another 3-year appointment. Then I'll reevaluate whether I want to go for my last appointment, or I'm going to apply for another couple of boards, or I would try for something else. And then I'll go from there. And so I don't narrow myself on one specific thing. I give myself broad options and broad chances. And so my target is probably bigger as well, I guess.
A general direction, right? But you give you a few choices as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So just focus on the single thing. You either make it or I love that.
And what happened was, if you look at my 5-year plan, I had a 5-year plan. Part of it says I've applied for the Psychologist Board, and then it goes, if I don't get this, then I will go to NZCCP and join one of their committees there. So I give myself things like that. So I guess I don't really define success or not success, and that's why I don't see myself as successful, because there's no definition of that for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
We have a question here. How would you know that they have acknowledged you? I'm not sure what they are. If that person can specify, that'd be great. And yeah, how would you know they have acknowledged you? The mainstream people.
And acknowledge, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by acknowledge? Can you specify it again? You see, this person specified they, which is mainstream population. What do you mean by acknowledge? Can you please specify that? Acknowledge by say hi to you, look at you, or acknowledge by yeah, if that person can specify, that'd be really cool. Thank you. We'll come back to that question. Keep going. That's great. Keep going.
Okay. So that kind of leads me to where I am today. And guess what? Still learning. Still another stage, another set of new skills and behaviors that now I realize I'm starting to need to learn to be where I am. So we've talked about the Psychologist Board so far, and I will continue about that because this is a whole new experience for me. It's a board with leadership by colored women. When I entered, the chair was a Indian woman, part Indian.
Oh, really? I didn't realize.
Yeah, she was the acting chair at the time. And we have lots of Maori members who were quite well-spoken, outspoken, and were truly involved in the decision-making.
Quite strong Maori females, I remember.
Yeah, I love it. And I was so lucky and blessed because you can imagine at this stage, I still hold a lot of beliefs about myself, my abilities, or my lack of abilities, and sometimes still protecting myself and thinking of that fake it till you make it. So in this space, what I learned was vulnerability. So this is where that shell, that defense, that in protection starts to fall away. Because in a place like this, when I am still protected, if I still fake my confidence, if I still am protecting myself, if I'm still focused on fitting in, this is no longer the right place for it. I would now be seen as dishonest or poor integrity. I'll be seen as, all those things.
Said to me, these are a whole bunch of psychologists really survived.
I know. These people are survivors themselves. They got there with the same set of skills. Yes. So this is not the space for it. This time it's about courage to show my weaknesses so I can ask for help and work on it. To say I don't know so that the right decisions can be made with honest information. To say I'm nervous or scared so that other people know it's normal and that it's okay, and that they can see that it's okay to be nervous and scared and it doesn't limit you as well. And so vulnerability was something I learned at this stage. Humility. So at this, again, over the last few years at this stage, I was being presented a lot of other opportunities, and because I've struggled so hard to get here, and I've seen this with other young people who have gotten into positions. I've built a defense thinking, oh, I have made it, right? And in my experience, there's some kind of hierarchy. This means I can be proud and I can expect people to treat me well because I've gotten to a place that people might treat me well. Of course, I was wrong, as I always am. when I first started getting these opportunities, I remember I was in a job interview and I mentioned this as part of my achievement. And immediately I got stopped by the interviewer, who was a senior person. And she goes, "Why you?" She's like, "This is a really difficult position. Why would they want you? What can you contribute?" Like straight to me.
Wow.
One of my kind of supervisors laughed and said they must be really desperate to find people and that no one wants the role. That's probably why they have you.
Oh,
So,
that's not kind. Okay.
yeah, so remember, again, New Zealand does have a culture of tall poppy syndrome. And sometimes people aren't happy when you're doing well or when you're trying to do well. They may feel threatened or feel like you're competing with them. So what I did was, again, I pick my battles. I go, "Oh, don't worry. It's only because I'm Asian and they wanted diversity. And they were also looking for young, inexperienced people. So it made them feel like I wasn't competing with them because they only wanted me because I was inexperienced and they wanted diversity. Because this is not the place to fight my battles. But what I did learn, though, is that sometimes people may feel threatened. And I noticed this a lot among females.
Yeah.
And sadly, I've also noticed this a lot among really newly successful Asian people. I sometimes notice that with my peers, the people that treat them worse are the more successful Asian people who have felt like they've come to a place. And now that, I've suffered so much getting here, and now it's my turn to enjoy this.
I guess they know how hard the journey is, right? And when they finally get there, and then there is a sense of, gosh, the resource is limited. We're gonna fight that sitting there, that anxiety sitting there.
Yeah. And that's where I go back to the next point, that there is enough for everyone. That's another thing I learned. So sometimes in these Western countries, they give us limited resources and opportunities, right? Like we talk about that one Asian. So now all the Asians feel like they're fighting for that one spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? So it's like saying they have the whole pie and you get a small slice. This slice belongs to you. And we believe it. And we start fighting each other for that one slice. We compete with each other. We hold each other back. We don't celebrate our successes. I mentioned this before. In companies, I had friends who found that when they first join a new company, it's usually the senior Asian lady who has struggled so hard to get there herself that treats her the worst.
Yeah.
And so what I learned about this is to not fight each other for a small piece of the pie. Get together and help each other out and fight for the whole pie, because there is enough for everyone. On a larger scale, we have to realize we're not limited by what people allocate to us or allow us to have.
To get together and fight. The important part is get together.
Yeah, work with each other.
Yeah,
because we get the whole pie. The whole pie is for everyone. We don't just have to fight for the tiny slice, and sometimes we trap ourselves and we focus our energies on fighting each other. And which led me to my fourth point, where hold the door open for each other. So I have a mentor who is a Maori lady, strong, gentlest, strongest woman I've ever met. And the one thing she said to me that I really still hold true is, she said, when we first talked, she said, "Sister, we need to hold the door open and bring more of us in." She says, she's like, "I'm holding the door in, I'm bringing people in, I'm bringing you in, you bring someone else in. We have to keep bringing more and more of us in." And she's right. And so that's one thing I learned there too.
That's so cool. We have 2 questions, if that's okay. We got a clarification for being acknowledged. So acknowledged means that you are an indispensable person of the team and your work, and you as a person valuable, although you are not a mainstream white person. So the question is, how would you know that they, the mainstream population, have acknowledged you? I guess have truly accepted you and value you as a team member and as an individual.
I guess the thing is, I don't tend to focus a lot on whether I am or I'm not. but I know that and I also have but you kind of know, I guess, in a way, and I accept that there will be places that I am seen as a team player and I am seen as an individual and as an equal. And I know that there will be times that I'm seen as not equal. There will be times that are seen as equal. There will be times that I would be seen as part of the team, and there will be times that I would be seen as just diversity card. And through my experience in the last 10 to 15 years, I do know when my opinions are being heard, when I'm being taken seriously, when my suggestions are being seen as valuable or not. And because now, and this will be my next slide, I no longer need easy opportunities. I can choose whether something is worth my time or not. If I do notice that my contributions are not valuable to the team, I'm more than comfortable to let those opportunities go because, yeah, that is just that. So I guess what I'm saying is back to where I was in the beginning is I invest in myself and I develop myself. And whether or not people fully accept me is not usually my target. It's just about how much of it I am aware of and how much I would reflect on and how that will help me with my next step. Does that kind of make weird sense?
I think it makes sense to me because I think I've gone through that personal journey as well. I think for me initially, I got really caught up on why are they not fully accepting like and then gradually, I don't know, maybe it's just because that's just a reality. You're not going to be acknowledged or fully accepted 100% of the time. It is, it's out of my control. I either choose to focus on that and be miserable, or move on and be myself and choose to be with people who fully accept and acknowledge me, and choose to be at positions who I'm comfortable with. So I guess I gradually shifted my focus on things that is
you can do, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then I think it's just about your mental health, your happiness. It doesn't matter where you are, even if you are in your home country, like how can you be acknowledged most of the time? Always going to be barriers, always going to be discrimination, even you're in your homeland. How you choose your happiness, your mental health, or you choose to be accepted by everyone.
And I think you'll experience this in your workplace too, Yi, is that sometimes in teams, people may not take your opinion seriously. But what you can do and what I do is I focus on my skills and my ability, because what is important to me is not whether people think I'm worth anything. What is important to me is that I have the skills and the abilities. I have the knowledge that I say I have in order to do the best job that I want to do. When I see my clients, when I see my patients, when I'm on the board making decisions, I'm not doing it for anything more than because I want to do my best. So I guess that's where my focus is, again, investing that attention in how I can be better. And as long as I hold that true to myself, that is,
And I guess for me, in order to survive, if I'm in a group work environment, is that yes, there are going to be people who can't even make eye contact with me, who's constant. There's always going to be several of them, but there's always occasionally one or two actually quite open and loving and quite decent, fun to be with. There's always one or two. So find those people, find your safety. You can find New Zealand is still a lovely place that you can find it. So invest in those people, invest in those relationships rather than focus on being acknowledged by everyone.
So work with people who bring out the best in you.
I think so. Yeah, that's how I met my husband. There's another question. Sorry to slow you down. Do you think I think this person means by those people on the psych board, they pretended as well as you called the others in the board, quotation mark, survivors?
Okay, this is me not wanting to assume, so I can't say I know. for sure. I guess when I said that, I said it quite quickly. But I would imagine for a lot of people who are, especially colored women, and I've had some conversations with colored women, a lot of colored women in leadership positions got there because they worked smart and they did do things and behaved in certain ways that felt challenging or uncomfortable, that they had to behave in a more confident way, that they had to invest in their skills, they had to develop themselves, they had to present themselves in a different way from what they are used to. And they would have experienced discrimination. There is no way, so that I can say, there is no way that they wouldn't have experienced discrimination or racism or barriers getting to where they were.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like psych board is actually quite difficult to get there. It doesn't matter actually in a way. It doesn't matter your ethnicity or your gender. It's just hard to get there or harder to get there. That is why it's fair enough for Valerie to assume they're all survivors, I think. Yeah, because
I guess, the context of saying that was in some of the colored women, because I'm talking about, being women with.
How many psychologists we have in New Zealand? I forgot the number. Is it like nearly 4,000? Am I right or wrong?
A few like that, about 4,000. You're pretty good with your numbers.
Thank you. I'm Asian. Keep going. We do have some questions, but keep going. I will definitely ask them. So if people still have questions, put it in the chat. I will definitely go get to it. Keep going, Valerie. Thank you.
Yeah, so just really lightly to kind of wrap up a little bit, I just learned, overall summarizing, I learned how to be flexible. The environment and situations change or stay the same because of what I do. Just because something has worked before doesn't mean that doesn't mean the same strategy is the right one to keep using. I remind myself sometimes that it's, for me, I play the game, but I also remember it's just a game. It's okay to play the game. It's okay to not be myself all the time. And it's also okay to be myself. The thing that I have to learn was to not get pulled into values that don't work for me, regardless of whether they are values that belong to the Western culture or the Eastern culture, to know that the rules of the game are always changing, and so can you, but you don't have to. The important thing is working with what you have. So sometimes I think of it like this. Sometimes in a poker game, holding a 10 diamond means nothing, depending on with what's on the table. Sometimes it becomes a royal flush. Sometimes it's just a card. So timing and context for different skills and different strategies and characteristics is everything. Focusing on what I can do, which I talked about that earlier already, investing in the process. Things are still difficult at the moment, and I'm still faced with challenging situations that seem impossible. And so because there's so much to do, I often choose low-hanging fruit. What I can do, what can I do with what I have now? And I guess it's important to note, you don't have to be an extrovert or be confident or have high self-esteem or be loud to be a leader to do well. You just need to know what you can do about it.
People misunderstand about us as well. A lot of time I tell my clients, I'm actually a real introvert, and they get really surprised. Like you don't have to be an extrovert to be a psychologist. You don't have to be an extrovert to get to management or leadership roles. It just actually means you need to do some good self-care after after a day of work, because that's energy output. That's it. Doesn't mean you so be proud to be an introvert. I'm a very proud introvert.
Me too. I like that I can comfortably sit at home and watch TV all day.
Like I used to put signs up by my desk, be like, I'm an extrovert, leave me alone. And my mother they will come annoying me on purpose just because I put it out there.
I put big headphones on sometimes.
So be proud, and people actually love it, respect that. I remember when my last job, people would be like, "You do want to come for lunch?" I'd be like, "No, I need to recharge. Leave me alone." And they love that. They think it's hilarious. Because I was proud, I was confident to be an introvert. So they really respected that.
yeah, you're authentic.
Yeah.
So what I found was figuring out what you are, then reframing it, using it, finding opportunities for it, growing first. And we talk about that safety, growing first in places that accept me. And then the other thing is, with a lot of that faking it and fitting in and being confident, the thing I learned that was quite important is to own my strengths and own my weaknesses. So for example, when I public speak and I get nervous, I just laugh and tell people. Then they laugh and I can stop pretending that I'm okay. And that makes things a bit easier for everyone.
Yeah, I guess you did trying to fit in, you did trying to do all sorts of things to get through your client-side programs, but one thing I love about you is you never actually lost your authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually never lost it. You always have that in you. So that's why I think that's really cool.
Yeah, like play the game, but remember it's just a game.
Yeah, but remember you're still you. You didn't lose part of you. You're just trying to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the other thing I mentioned. Be authentically you, even in the little things, especially in the little things. It's more sustainable that way. I enjoy a lot of the little things in life and not allow people to dictate or tell me what is silly or weird or sometimes we're afraid of being too normal or afraid of being too boring or afraid of being too weird. You can't sometimes please everyone. So sometimes bring yourself joy. For example, on my dog's birthday, I dressed up and brought him to a restaurant to eat with me. Everyone was staring at me, but I did it.
You're the weird Asian lady with the dog.
Yes, I'm the weird Asian lady that dresses a dog up and goes out to dinner with him.
That's awesome. Good on you.
I learned a lot about Maori and Maori's place in New Zealand, and I know that sometimes leads to a bit, again, we're talking about the limited resources where we feel we're fighting and all of that. And that was something that I learned quite a lot about.
I love you put it there because I really want to really stress that. For me, that's really important. Like what you said before, you said we're not fighting for one piece of pie. We actually deserve to have that whole pie. I think a lot of people from my culture, they do feel quite, I guess, nervous or anxious about, how Maori, they're taking up a lot of resources, that impression. But the thing is, people, if this country willing to give resources to these minorities, okay, that means they're willing to give it to us as well. Okay, that this the environment is kind enough to provide for minorities. So this is not they are taking your piece. This is, if they are getting it, we are probably getting it as well. We're not losing anything. So that's what Valerie said, is we need to get together as minorities to fight for the entire piece of pie rather than just be like, I only have this one tiny piece and let's all go for that. That's why, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. And also I also want to recognize that New Zealand is Maori's home. Exactly. The things that they don't have were taken away from them. Exactly. And so recognizing that has been a really important part of my journey. The other thing that's really important is those boundaries and limits. So not every opportunity is an opportunity anymore. So my change between the lack of opportunity and now I have a lot of opportunity, but I lack the time and the resource and energy to switching out of my deprivation mode, because I still see some of my colleagues who now still take every opportunity that comes their way without reflecting about prioritizing or anything, because
about investing smartly, is that what you mean?
Yeah, because back in the time when they feel all opportunity is important, now they continue to have that even though there are so much opportunity, so they end up getting quite burnt out or not giving the quality version of themselves. They just collecting a lot of things on their CV, but none of these individual things are good quality things anymore. And so I had to switch out of feeling deprived and focus on just being good quality where I am for now. The other thing that helped me along the way is be kind, even when it seems to lead to nothing. Again, I see people who only invest kindness into things that lead to outcomes. But you know what? One thing I've learned a lot is to be kind, to have a hard back, but a really soft front. And that's
and the journey is hard, and it's gonna continue being really, really hard, isn't it? But it will be really sad if you lose your kindness, if you lose your love and care towards others and yourself as well. So
I have met great leaders, and the best, most powerful leaders are often kind and gentle and soft.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that. Oh, wow.
There are some of those websites that we talked about. So the first two, you can register into the Ministry of Ethnic Communities and Ministry of Women. They have databases that we can register into, and they can tell you more about opportunities. And if you're applying for any other roles, you can tell them you're applying and they can endorse you as well, which is really nice of them. And then there's just other websites with stuff. And then this is just me.
Go back. Let me take a screenshot. Go back. Let me take a screenshot of that. Thank you. Thank you. And then, yeah, I will share that in the group later. Thank you, everyone. And next page. And tell everyone what you offer. You offer mentoring, right?
Yeah, mentoring, professional supervision, teaching workshop, or if you've got some kind of research interests. Because usually I'm really busy. I'm 3 boards, 2 jobs, a council, potential new business. But this is something I'm really passionate about. And seeing young Asian Chinese people succeed using our skills and values, something I really care about. So I do have some limited availability allocated for career mentorship, professional supervision, and things like that. So again, I've said from the beginning, I don't have all the answers. I cannot promise anything. But if you have the energy, motivation, and you're willing to be responsive and reflective, I could be available for one-off appointments or a few appointments or discussions for that. I guess just like private practice, the rates are standard. Yeah.
So just to clarify, you don't accept therapy referrals because you're
I'm full. Yeah, my therapy stuff is full.
Yeah, so you accept career and mentorship with a standard price, right? Because
and professional supervision if that's a thing too, or teaching workshops. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so
sorry I took up so much time. What is that?
No, it's not. It's actually really good timing. I'm really impressed. Well done, honestly. Really impressive. Let's just go through the questions. So in a Western workplace, when your colleagues are targeting you, competing with you, or feeling your strength or ability might be better than yours, or might be better than hers, and she is not liking you, or sometimes will be in conflict with the work with this person, how can an Asian psychologist or any Asian clinician deal with the situation? Basically, if someone doesn't like you, kind of mildly on the bullying side. How do you deal with that?
So personally, for me, I try a few things, and I tend to go back to my fundamental skills at that point, which is to approach, question, be curious. I tend to do these things where I'm like, oh, can you tell me more? Or explain this to me. And I would also put out that, oh, can you show, like if someone believes that their skills are better than mine, I would offer first. So I always offer my humbleness first by saying, oh, can you show me this, or can you teach me or explain this to me? I'll do it in a more harmless way about something else, just to get a bit of that flow and movement going ahead. And then if that doesn't work, then I would do that less and less. And then I'll start just accepting that bit where I accept being okay working by myself and investing in the people who are willing to work with me. And I back off a little bit and I stop being overly friendly. And I start becoming, and you can see my tone changing, where I start becoming just a little bit less involved, just a bit more cold and distant, and focus on my work. And they either are more likely to pull into me, or they leave me alone. So those are some of the things I try in steps first. I always try a more humble and friendly approach.
I think what you mean is you give that person a chance first, right?
Yeah.
Be humble, kind of be like, hey, you do know your thing, you know.
Yeah, can you show me? Can you teach me something?
Yeah, give them a chance to show that you are, you know, you're not a threat, you're willing to build that relationship. Give them chance, but limited, right? Like we always say, limited. And then when it doesn't work, that person's still not willing, just back off, keep your distance, keep yourself safe. They're always going to be that one person is willing to build that connection, that one person is always friendly and safe. So yeah, invest your time and energy on that person. Just keep yourself safe after you have tried. Don't try too hard.
Yeah.
I'm saying try, but not try too hard.
Yeah, those ones again.
Yeah, those ones again. Yeah. So that's a question for both of us. Do we have any suggestions on improving the English? I think your English is good. The English proficiency in clinical psychology field specifically. You go first because you know English is your first language. You go first, and I'll go second because English is my second language.
Sorry, can I understand the question better if you repeat that?
Have you got any suggestions on improving your English proficiency in clinical psychology field specifically?
So that means you're already in it and you want to improve, or you're not in it and you want to improve?
Already in it. How do you improve it?
I talk to people quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of energy interacting, and I interact as well with professionals. I find so a few things I do to improve my proficiency or improve my professionalism is I observe again. So there are ways of doing this. See, back in the days when I'm sitting, say, in a meeting, or when I'm in a again, positions where I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm listening to people. Sometimes we're so focused on ourselves and how we're performing, we stop listening to what other people are saying. But what I do a lot is I observe people a lot. When I'm in meetings, sometimes I notice someone who gets more respect than others or speaks exceptionally proficiently. I listen, I tune in, and I'm like, what is she saying or what is he saying that is different, and that makes him or her sound more professional? What are they doing? What are they saying? And I really focus in on that. So I pay a lot of attention to the way people interact around me. If I talk to someone and the way they're speaking is something I like the sound of, I will listen. I'm like, what are they doing differently from me? I'll slow down. Oh, they choose their words carefully. I see they don't use and too very much. And I do that when I give talks or speeches. Even presenting at an MDT, I practice. I practice in my car. I practice before going in. I write it down. I practice before going to an interview. I don't just come up with answers that I want to say. I practice the words coming out of my face. I practice saying it. When I watch videos and I see things, I actually say it out loud. I do practice this a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I guess my turn. Because I mean, I just want to like clarify. English is Valerie's first language, and even that she practice. So here you go. English is my second language. How do I do it? Is look, this person just says she is, I assume it's a she is not in the psych field. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it takes how many years to be registered, right? So while you're at uni, that is your opportunity to go all the way, right? To go practice and to go all out on your assignment, to read, to surround yourself with English materials. I have to say for years, I had to almost sacrifice my culture a little bit. What does it mean is not I disown my culture. What does it mean is like when in my spare time, even the stuff I watch for fun, for leisure, I make a choice to watch English shows without subtitles, right? Without Chinese subtitles. Even though I want to watch that Chinese show, it's because it's comforting, it's familiar, I just want to relax. But no, I make a conscious decision to watch that English show. yeah, why? Because I want to surround myself with that culture, not just language, it's more actually culture. Once you start working, you'll realize it's actually not a language issue, it's a culture issue. When it comes to a cultural issue, it's the subtleness that we are not getting if we are not surrounded with that culture. So if you live with your family, if you go home speak Chinese, then you need to put a lot of effort into surround yourself with a lot of English materials. To get really familiar. That's what I mean by I did actually sacrifice that for years. I wouldn't even touch, entertainment wise, I wouldn't even touch Chinese materials. Only recently I start to relax a little bit because I think I start to really get that. And so writing, I have really, really struggled. All my uni years, it's just not my strong pursuit. That is why I never tried to interview for the Clinside program, just because my writing is just not good. It's not until I got the job at Oranga Tamaliki, and it required a lot of heavy report writing work, and then day after day after day, writing. That's 90% of my job at that time. And my writing really got improved. So it just got to show you there's no shortcut, there's no what to do, what not to do. It's literally just practice day after day, week after week, year after year. It's just building that muscle. So I hope that answers your question.
I agree. It's not a language thing. It is my first language, and yet I still have to practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go through the questions again. Do you, oh, that's a really good question. Do you girls speak a little bit Maori, and is it necessary? Yes, it is necessary. Sorry, I jumped in. You go first, Valerie.
No, you go for it.
I think it's necessary, and I love practicing it, even though I can't roll my R at all. I really can't. I tried so hard to practice it to a point that spit come out of my mouth and then go everywhere. I really can't. But I really love practicing it just because I love the sound of the language. I didn't tell you that, Valerie, because I did a music degree before psychology, okay? I think first year, Richard Nunn, do you know him? He passed away now. Richard Nunn is a really famous musician who really heavy on Maori instrument, like bone carving flute. And then he came to our course and did a presentation on Maori instrument. And when he started to play, oh my goodness, I just felt my entire body just want to cry. Not just I want to cry. I'm not a spiritual person, but that was a spiritual experience for me. So that was how many years ago? It was nearly 20 years ago. So yeah, so I really like the language, and I do find the culture is very similar to Asian culture.
I agree. Their culture is very similar to Asian culture.
And when we do get a mentor or a cultural supervisor, I actually feel really close to them. I see them as an elderly, like an auntie, like an uncle.
Yeah, agree.
And then just ask funny questions and have it's actually really, really lovely. Yeah, so yeah, I think we all do learn it, but I find enjoyment learning it, to be honest. Yeah, I don't just learn it because I do this job. I literally find enjoyment learning it. You go.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say, and I also enjoy it, and I also feel that it is partly, and it's my responsibility to honor Maori as people of the land. And what I find is when I honor and acknowledge this New Zealand being their home, they welcome me, they welcome us, they really do. They, truly, when we take away all the political structure and things like that, truly they feel like they're hosts of the land, and that they welcome people to it.
Yeah.
And learning the language is part of that coming onto the land and being part of someone else's home. Someone who goes and visits China and lives there for 5-6 years does end up learning about, they can't completely not speak Chinese at all. And I know that, this is English here, but it's also English and Maori. And then so that's why I take the time to learn a bit of both.
Yeah, and I don't think the expectation was ever you become fluent. I think they really appreciate just a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
here, a little bit quieter, and just a little bit. And then they really, really appreciate it. And I have to be honest, you know, in my clinical work, when there's a Maori client come, it does feel every time, almost every time, it feels like a good match, just because there's a similarity there, you know,
Yeah.
there's a connection there. So honestly, don't feel like because you're Asian, this is foreign to you. You will, if you actually just keep your open mind and then get into it, you'll find this is actually very familiar to you. This is not foreign. Yeah, it's an amazing experience, and I'm not exaggerating that. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? No? Okay. If there's no questions, guys, this is Valerie's contact detail. She offers these services. Obviously, they are paid services. If you're interested, please contact her. And yeah. Do you have any final words, Valerie? You survived this.
No, I'm so relieved. You have no idea.
But I have to say, I'm so happy you did this, okay? I really, really appreciate it. And it's gonna be on YouTube. It's gonna be a great resources for the Asian community. So thank you so much. And you have put so much time and effort in this workshop, in this presentation, and I can see it. So I just don't know how to thank you enough. So thank you so much. Thank you.
That is all good. Thank you
Thank
for yeah. Thank
You're
you
like,
for
I don't know, thank you.
giving me
What
the
I want to thank
opportunity.
you. All the stress
It's
you
like-
gave me. I don't feel very thankful right now.
I'm like, oh, they were helping me up. But yeah, I appreciate people coming to this. I know it's like 9 p.m. at night, but yeah.
Oh, good. Hey, look, I'll leave you alone this year, Valerie. No more workshops. You go enjoy your life and you go do your amazing work down south. And we'll keep in touch. And thank you so much, guys, to be with us tonight. Yeah. If that's all, good night, everyone. Bye, Valerie. Bye.
Bye.